Crime impacts Latin America disproportionately high. Consider this, a UN report says robberies have tripled in the last 25 years alone. The homicide rate is above epidemic proportions in 11 out of 18 countries surveyed. And between 2000 and 2010, more than 1 million people died as a result of criminal violence in Latin America and the Caribbean. I'm joined now by Cynthia Arnson. She's director of the Latin American program at the Wilson Center. Are there any of the countries there in Latin America that are getting the fight against crime right, would you say?
Well, there are a number of countries. There's obviously a great deal of variation between a country such as El Salvador or Honduras that has astronomical levels of homicide, particularly youth homicide, and countries like Chile or Uruguay and Costa Rica. So there's an enormous variation within the hemisphere. A country such as Colombia has made large strides in reducing the number of homicides over the last 10, 15 years, but it does remain at epidemic proportions, something that the UN describes as more than 10 per 100,000. And in countries such as Brazil, which is currently hosting the World Cup, the homicide levels are, depending on the city, between 35 and even 50 homicides per 100,000. So the rate is significantly higher.
Certainly unacceptable, I guess most people would say by any standard. In 2012 in Latin America, 134,000 homicides. We have a graphic here. Let's put this up, and I want to talk to you about this. Of the top 10 countries in the world for homicides, Latin America and the Caribbean make up more than half. The homicide rate in Latin America is nearly double the rate in Africa. How big a concern is this for people going to Brazil for the World Cup, would you say?
Well, I would say throughout the hemisphere, it is the #1 concern that citizens express when they're asked about what is the principal concern in their country. There is a polling firm, Latino Barometro, based in Santiago, Chile, that has been taking these polls on a yearly basis over a period of several decades. And at first, unemployment and questions about the economy were the principal concern, and over the last several years, that has been surpassed by the concern for criminal violence. And it is a concern, I think, in Brazil. A number of almost all of the cities that are going to be hosting or that are hosting World Cup games have these higher than epidemic proportion of levels of homicides. But it's also important to remember, just as in a U.S. city or any other major urban center, that the violence is concentrated in certain areas. The principal victims are poor, and the principal victims in the case of Brazil are also Afro-Brazilians. So this is not necessarily something that tourists need to be concerned about, although everyone should be concerned in a large urban area in a developing country, even a solid middle-income growing country like Brazil.
You make the distinction, certain areas, certain pockets worse than others, and obviously even within a country, you're going to see that within cities. Do you see basically it staying contained in the region, or is there a spillover effect? Is it being exported? Do you see the violence moving elsewhere?
Well, the portion of the violence that's connected to organized crime is certainly spilling over. Not only is it a problem between, as in the past, South America and the United States, with Mexico as a transit country, now more and more there are consumers of illegal narcotics, in South America. That has added a new dimension, but there are also new trafficking routes every time that there is a clampdown on a particular route, whether it's through Mexico or Central America or the Caribbean. Traffickers go elsewhere, and there is a creation of a whole new market and trafficking lanes to Western Africa, the use of Brazil as a transit point to Europe. So it is a phenomenon that continues to diversify and morph and change. As much as there is progress in one area, there's always difficulty somewhere else.
What can be done? What should be done? Is there anything that can be done, do you think, to target this?
Well, there's a lot of discussion right now in the Western Hemisphere about how to deal with this in a different kind of way. Countries in the region are very much tired of fighting the so-called war on drugs. In the United States, even that term is no longer used. But there is a sense that there are better approaches coming at the problem as a public health problem, dealing with local criminal markets in municipalities, that there are ways that there are more violent and less violent ways to combat the phenomenon and not contribute to other sorts of problems as you attempt to address organized crime.
It's still a big, big issue, though.
It's definitely a big issue.
Cynthia Arnson, thank you so much for coming in. Appreciate it.
Sure.